Hello again. So, before really moving into creating hair cards and placing them on a head, let me just walk you through the kind of tools that I use, the kind of setup that I do previous to moving into creating of hair cards, right? So, there will be one plugin in particular that I will be using, which is Hair Tools for Blender. There are two specific tools in this plugin that I will be using a lot, which I will come to in upcoming videos. But let's say if you do not have this plugin right now, don't worry about it. Or let's say if you do not want to invest money purchasing this plugin because you think this might be your first creation of hair cards, and you think that it might not be a good investment into buying a product before really committing into it. Although it's really a good investment. I can recommend it to anyone who creates hair cards in Blender. Don't worry about it. I'll be going over some tools in Blender itself. Those will be internal tools that might take a little bit longer to set up, but rest assured they provide the same functionality as the tools in this plugin will provide you. That said, let's move into knowing the tools and the plugin itself. Alright, let me just start off by showing you how this plugin works, the ins and the outs, and some efficient techniques of using it, right? So first thing that you want to do is go into UV editing and open up the textures that you have baked. In my case, I will be opening up the alpha, this one, and you can open vertex colors or heights. For my case, I'll be going with heights because they have, a little bit of variations with a little bit of depth, right? So next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a plane in here, right? I'll just go in and move it a little bit downwards so that the origin point will be at the roots when I'll be just adjusting the haircuts, when I'll be adjusting the UVs onto the haircuts. So first I'll be just adjusting the UV on top of the primary haircut, right? Just like this. Let me just change this to alpha so that I can get a clear visibility on where the opacity is and where the transparency is, right? Next step, what I'm gonna do is add a little bit of span. In my case, let me just do 20. Should be more than enough. Next step, I'll go to shading, hit new. Make sure that you name your material accurately. For this one, I'll just say hair cards. Yeah, just name it whatever you want. Just make sure that you have a name that is identifiable, right? I'll hit the roughness to full, hit the specular to 0. I don't want any kind of reflection right now. Next thing, I'll just go in, texture, add an image texture. The way you do it is just hit Shift A and just go into the texture option and image texture. I'll hit alpha cards first and then I'll duplicate it, and next I'll go in and hit the heights, right? So for the bottom one where there is heights, I'll set the color to base color. I'll just connect it in here. And for the alpha cards, I'll just connect the colors to alpha, right? Or, I'll just reposition them so that I can have a little bit of cleaner layout. Okay, what I want to do is I want to see where the transparency is. In order to do that, I'll just select the plane, go into material properties in here, scroll down, and in the blend mode, hit alpha hashed, right? So here you have the transparency with the color variation and a little bit of depth, right? For the shadow mode, I'll just select it to none. I do not want any shadows while working with it. Next, what I'm going to do is, okay, let me just go into UV editing mode. Next, what I'm going to do is I'll just create the texture. I'll just create a plane for every texture that is available to me, right? In this case, I'll just create a few examples. When you will be doing it, just make sure that you create a single plane for every texture, right? Alright, so I have one for everything. For the flyaways, I'll just select the I'll just resize it to a reasonable size, you know, so that my texture do not get stretched a lot. Let's have two of them. Okay, cool. So now we have the hair cards, right? What you next want to do is you want to create clumps so that you know you can have some volumes already when you will be placing the hair cards. The way to create clumps is select any hair plane, duplicate it. Next, you can go in and go to edit mode, duplicate it again, rotate it at the green axis, right? In my case, it's the green axis. It depends on the orientation of the cards that you are working with, right? I'll just move it a little bit, and for this one, this card here, I'll just go in and select any other card set from my UVs, right? This way I can have a little bit of more variation for the clumps that I will be creating. Again, I'll just duplicate it and re-rotate it so that I can have a little bit of triangle like this. You know, some people like to do it with a plus sign. I personally prefer the triangle, you know, because it kind of creates a volume to work with, right? Of course, you won't find any volume if you look from this angle, but you know, just looking at it laterally, you'll find that there is a good amount of volume from every angle. So now you have it, right? What's next step is to make it efficient enough to place it on a head, right? The way traditionally the way you usually do it is soft select a vertex, right? Just elongate it, rotate it, you know, resize it, do the stuff. That's not how I'm going to work, right? I'm going to use a curve to operate this whole clump, right? And this is where the hair plugin comes in. So just hit N on your keyboard and hit on hair tools, and you'll have the plugin option, right? The way I like to use it is go in, add a curve. I personally like to work with NURBS curve. A lot of people like to work with Beziers. I never understand how they work. So it's just a personal preference, me working with the NURB curves, right? Hit the NURBS. Let me just put it in here. So first thing that I like to do is go to the curve properties, hit active splines, and just enable the endpoint. What this does is allows the curve to extend up to the endpoints, right? Next, I'll just moving this one so that the curves become a straight line, right? And just hit a subdivide in here so that I can have enough spans in the curve to work with. Okay, on to the next step. So I'll just select the curve. What I want is I want this clump to be the profile for this curve, right? The way to do it is go into your hair tools, go into hair system in here, then go into this plus button right here and select hair strand filter, right? So it will give you this option, add hair system. So no need to select anything on this one, just hit OK for now, and you will have a single strand, right? Now what we want is we do not want this strand, this single plane to be the profile, but rather we want this clump to be the profile, right? So the way to do is it's make sure that your curve is selected, go to profile, instead of flat profile UVs, just select mesh profile with UV, right? And you'll have an option in here, and in the object settings, just hit the eyedropper tool and select this clump object right here. Okay, the moment you do that, you'll find some orientation issues. We will be fixing it later. So right now, just go a little bit downwards and hit the materials. In this case, the hair cards, right? In order to fix this orientation problem, what you want to do is select the clump, select the mesh clump, right? And you want to go into edit mode and rotate it at a certain angle on a specific axis. This is a little bit of trial and error method. So I'm rotating it on Z axis, it doesn't work. Y axis, still no results, but yeah, X axis, rotating it at an angle of 90 degree on X axis should do the job, right? Also, you'll see that the original clump is at a little bit of offset from the original curve. The way to fix it is, as you can see in here, selecting the mesh, you'll see the origin point is at an offset. Make sure that the origin point is always at the roots of the clump mesh, right? So select the roots, hold Shift S and select cursor to selected, right? Go back to object mode, hit W on your keyboard, set origin to 3D cursor, right? So the origin point comes here, and now you have the profile aligning exactly with the curve, right? There is a few more fixes to be done. So if you orient it right now, and if I go into display wire, you can see the spans of the curves do not really orient with the curvature of the curve, right? So the way to fix it is go into deformers, right? Make sure that your curve is selected, go into deformers, and in the steps, hit it to 7, right? The highest steps. Another thing I like to change is under the curve options, resolution preview U. Just make sure that you set it to a higher number. So for example, 20, maybe 30 or something like that. That will ensure that you have the full curvature that your curve is allowed to have, right? So make sure that it's straight. Again, just change it to 30, right? Also for this one, I'll just put the origin point on here. Set origin to 3D cursor, right? Okay, cool. So next step, what you want to do is you want different set of clumps to work with, right? So here I have a clump with, an average amount of density, right? What you want is clumps with different density. So I'll just select this one, go in here, duplicate it, rotate it at an angle of, I don't know, maybe 15-30 degrees. Make sure that you have a reasonable triangle created. Okay. Also, it's not really necessary to have a triangle. You can create profiles on whatever kind of orientation you want. So for this case, let's just create a cross, right? Something like that. Move it a little bit upwards, right? And for this one, I'll just, change the UVs to something, little bit more, little bit different from what it used to be. Okay. Next step, just, reorient it at an angle of 90 degree on the X axis. Make sure that you have the origin point at the roots, right? Duplicate your existing curve and just go into here, systems, and delete the filter that you previously created. Create a new hair filter or a strand filter in that case, right? Select mesh profile with UVs. Select the mesh profile that you want to have right now. Change the material and set the spans to 7, which is the highest in this case. And yeah, there you have it, right? So you have got different clumps of hair strands and different curves to control them, right? So make sure that you have a set of them, a bunch of them to work with, right? From the most dense to the least dense, right? And this area, just fill them up with different variation of clumps. Okay, so that's all about the hair tool. I guess I'm missing something. What else? What else? Yeah. One more thing about this specific tool is it allows you to orient the tilt of any kind of hair strand, of any kind of curve, to a mesh, right? So I'll show you what I mean. So let's say, for example, right, you have a curve right here, okay? And for this one, let me just change the profile again. I'll just select this one, right? Rotate it an angle of x-axis 90°, apply the rotation. Go in and change the filter again. Mesh profile with UV. This one, right? Okay. So let's say I want to place it in here, right? So I'll just duplicate it, orient it on here. Something like this. Right? And let's say that you have got a very weird tilt, right? What did I do? Okay. Let's say you have got a very weird tilt in here. So what you want to do is to align the tilt of this curve without really, hitting Control T and manually doing it. You want it to align automatically to the sphere accurately, right? The way to do is go into your the plugin settings, go into here operators, and in the target menu just select the sphere, right? So you have a bunch of options in here. So in the target menu you want to select the object where you want to align your curve tilt to be. In this case, the sphere, right? And just hit align curve tilt. So since the sphere is now the parent object, or let's say the parent object that could have, the curve tilt aligned to, right? So when you hit align curve tilt, it just align itself automatically. Now you can just, move the curve out a little bit so that you do not create any Z fight on it, right? And you have the perfect alignment of curve tilt with the sphere. So yeah, that's all about the specific tool, right? Now let's just move on to Blender settings, or you can say the Blender internal tools that will allow something similar to create curves with different profiles like this, but we won't be using any plugins for that. It will be just Blender internal tools. So for the Blender internal tools, the setup might be a bit time consuming and maybe a bit hectic, but since it's free and since you are getting the setup ready made, you cannot really complain of that, right? So yeah, that's about this section. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, so in this one, let's just cover up Blender's internal tool on creating haircuts, right? So first off, again, I'm just going to UV editing, and I will be opening the textures alpha map, and this time let's just go with a vertex color, just to have a little bit of variation from the previous section. So how to use Blender internal tools to create haircuts, right? Go in, add a NURBS curve, make sure that you go to active splines, hit the endpoint enabled, right? Again, I'm just going to make it straight just by moving these two vertices onto the center. Add a subdivision. Right, next step, what I want to do is add a profile to it. The way to do it is you can duplicate this curve itself, right? And I'm just gonna remove any kind of extra vertices. Then on the edit mode itself, I'll duplicate the curve and just create a curve profile. So this one is a curve profile and this one will be my parent curve. So selecting the parent curve, if I go to geometry, bevel object, and then I pick up this one. You can see that it takes the shape of this object here, right? This curve object here. Always make sure that for your profile, the origin point is always at the center, and for the curve, your endpoint should always be somewhere around the starting point or at the end point. Now, the reason why I say starting point or the end point and not roots or tips is because we haven't yet added the hair textures. Alright, to add the hair textures in them, what I need to do is I need to go to shading, click on new material, right, and select my texture from here. I'll just go in, image texture, color to color, and yeah, okay, let me first just select the alpha cards, the vertex colors for the color, and I'll just shift deduplicate it and select the alpha cards and connect the colors to alpha. Go into my material properties, scroll down and hit the blend mode to alpha hashed. Okay, so now we have something to work on with. But as you can see, what this curve is doing is it is just taking up all the information that is present on the texture. Let me just open it up right here. It's taking all the information that is present in the texture and putting it onto the curve. The way that we fix it is it's a bit of manual and a bit of hectic work. So the way we fix it is, let's just go in and add Shift A on the material menu and search for texture mapping, or search for mapping. Yeah, okay, search for mapping, and this node should pop up. Next thing what I'll do is I'll go in and search for, and I'll be searching for texture coordinate in input and texture coordinate, right? So connect the UVs to the vector input, and the vector output from the mapping node, you need to connect them to the hair card's vertex color and the hair card's opacity, right? Now here you have some parameters to work with, that is the location, rotation and the scale of the textures. So let's just go in, and as you will see, okay, let me just adjust the roughness. As you will see, the more I work and play with them, I will be adjusting the hair cards in that way, right? So I have pressed 7 on my keyboard, right, just to see everything from the top axis. Let me just switch off the world. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to rotate the texture on the z-axis. To do that, I'll go in here, rotation, and in the rotation I'll just hit maybe -90, so that I have the texture that aligns with the direction of the curves, right? Next thing what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play with scale. So for the scale, I want it to be scaling in y-axis. So for the scale, I'm just gonna play and just find a good spot where I can land, I can land on a good texture set. Not texture set, but a good strand set on this image texture. Okay, that works fine. Also, let's say for example, I want to work with this one, right? This particular strand set. Okay, so in order to do that, what I'll do is, let me just erase it. Okay, so in order to do that, I'll just move the texture onto x-axis just a little bit. Maybe not x, I guess it should be y. Just a little bit like that, and then scale again on the x-axis. So much so that this particular texture set gets stretched from the starting point of the curve to the end point of the curve. All right. Yeah. So here you have it. The first texture set, right? The problem with this right now is it's not accurately aligned, as you can see. right? So you have got a lot of alpha space areas, a lot of negative space to cover up. To do that, just simply you need to play with the adjustments. There you go. So yeah, just make sure that the whole texture, it aligns with, the complete plane that you have. And as you can see, there is the polygon of these planes are unnecessarily lot. So to fix that, what you can do is you can go to the profile object, go to curve settings, and just reduce the resolution, right? Maybe 2 should work, right? Don't go up to 1. And for the curve itself, if you want to reduce the resolution, just go into curve settings, in the resolution preview, just reduce the resolution to your desirable amount. The drawback of using this method is, for any kind of profile, if you have two intersections, right, you cannot input different textures, or say like different strand sets for texture for each of the planes, right? So this one right here will have a space in the texture, right? And this one will have the exact same place in the texture. I do not know how to, if there is a way, just let me know in the comment box below. If there is a way to just apply two different positions for the UVs for two different planes in the same curve object. But right now I don't think Blender have this feature, and if it has, I do not know much about it. But yeah, this is how you create curve clumps in Blender's internal tools, right? And yeah, other thing, if you want to create some variations of this, make sure that you select the original mesh, name it something reasonable. Say for example, you're working with a base texture, right? So in this one, I'm working with the tertiary textures, so I'll just name it T1, right? And if I shift deduplicate it and just move it to this side, right? And now I want to change the texture in here, right? So what I'll do is I'll go into materials, I'll just copy the material, call it T2, say for example tertiary 2, and then I'll just play with the location settings so that I can get a different space in the UV for the texture set, right? Not the texture set, but different space from the UV to cover the plane up with. Okay, just a little bit more adjustment. So this is where the hectic process comes in. You need to be like really precise with your clicks and stuff, right? So we have got two tertiary sets. Now let's go in and let's just duplicate the material and make it let's say for example P1. That means like one primary set, and I'll just offset it in the material itself, scale it a little bit, something like that, and yeah, that should be good to go. So yeah, this is how you create hair clumps in Blender internal tools. Just know that you cannot have a lot of variations in this method. But if you still if you are still using this method, just know that the amount of variation that you can have using this one will be more than enough when you will be putting all these hair cards all together on a head, right? Because how can I explain it? The more you clump the mesh together, the more you put on top of one, right? The more cards you put on top of each other, the more you lose the sense of repetitiveness, right? So yeah, that's all about the internal tools of Blender and how you can use them. Another thing, there is no align to tilt option if you are working with this one, right? So it's just not possible. Any Blender developer, if you are listening to this and if you are watching this video, just my humble request to you, just introduce a new button to align the curve tilt to any object in the next versions or the next updates of Blender. That's it. That's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.